"Excuse me, you're in my seat." The boy's voice was quiet, but it cut through the chatter like glass. Jalen Carter held his boarding pass out, small hands steady despite the weight of every eye on him. Seat 2A, printed clear as day. But the man sitting there didn't move, didn't blink. He adjusted his cufflinks, tapped his phone, and acted like the boy didn't exist. Jalen tried again, louder this time. "Sir, that's my seat." The man finally turned. Richard Bennett, mid-50s, expensive suit, face carved by arrogance. His laugh came sharp and mocking. "Your seat? Kid, you must be confused. First class isn't a playground. Show me that ticket again. Looks like something printed off the internet." A few passengers chuckled. Others shook their heads, whispering. Jalen's ears burned. Before he could respond, a flight attendant swept in. Heather, blonde bun, crisp smile. She looked at Richard first, not Jalen. "What seems to be the issue?" "My son's seat," said Marcus Carter, stepping forward. Marcus was tall, broad, calm, but his jaw was steel. He held the same pass, flashing it at Heather. 2A belongs to him. Richard snorted. "You're joking, right? This boy in first class? What's next? Dogs in the cockpit?" Laughter rippled. Heather winced but kept her smile. "Sir, I'm sure this can be resolved. Mr. Bennett, maybe—" "No," Richard snapped. "I booked this. I'm not moving. Check again." Heather turned back to Marcus. Her voice softened, the way adults do when they're dismissing. "Could you just step aside while I double-check? Mistakes happen." "Mistakes don't," Marcus said, voice low. "Not with boarding passes." Jalen looked up at his father. His voice trembled, but he forced it out. "Why do they always think we don't belong here?" The cabin went still. Passengers shifted uncomfortably. A woman whispered. He showed the ticket. "What's the problem?" Heather's cheeks flushed. She tapped her tablet, frowned, tapped again. Finally, "You." "It does say 2A, for Mr. Jalen Carter." Marcus crossed his arms. "Exactly." But Richard leaned back, smirking. "First class is for professionals, not children. You expect me to believe this boy is flying alone up here? He should be in coach where he belongs." Jalen's hands curled into fists. His chest tightened, but his voice didn't crack. "I belong here." The tension snapped when another passenger closed her book. Dr. Eleanor Hayes, silver hair, eyes sharp. Seat 2C. "If it helps," she said, standing, "the boy can have my seat. I don't mind moving." Richard's grin widened. Victory. There, problem solved. Marcus bristled. Pride roared in his chest, but Jalen tugged his sleeve. "It's okay, Dad. I'll sit there." Marcus bent low, whispering, "You don't deserve this. Don't let them tell you otherwise." Jalen nodded, sat in 2C. Richard stretched in 2A like a king reclaiming his throne. The whispers buzzed, some disgusted, some amused. Heather exhaled, relieved the storm had passed, but Jalen felt every glance, every assumption. He unfolded his tablet. The screen glowed with sketches, coding lines, diagrams, tactile learning modules, not games, not cartoons. Work that was already changing classrooms across the country. Richard sneered. "Playing Candy Crush?" Jalen looked up, steady. "It's a reading tool, for kids who can't see words. Helps them read with sound and touch." Richard's smile faltered. He muttered something under his breath and turned away. The engines roared. The plane taxied. Seatbelts clicked. Turbulence hit early. A shudder rattled the glasses. Jalen stiffened, breathing shallow. From behind, a woman crouched. Olivia Green, early 30s, sharp suit, calm presence, COO of Carter Tech. "In through your nose," she whispered. "Hold, out through your mouth, 4 counts." Jalen followed. Steady. Richard rolled his eyes. Over-dramatic. But the boy's breathing evened. His heart slowed. He was fine. For now. Because then a chime. Heather appeared again, smile tighter. "Mr. Carter?" she said, leaning toward Marcus across the aisle. "The captain would like a word, and he's asking for your son as well." Marcus frowned. "Why?" Heather hesitated. "It's a security alert. The captain will explain." The words struck like ice. Gasps rippled through the cabin. Passengers turned, eyes sharp, whispers harsher. Marcus stood slowly. Jalen rose beside him, clutching his tablet like armor. Every gaze followed them as they walked forward. Richard smirked in 2A. "Knew it," he muttered. At the cockpit door, the captain appeared. Captain Robert Collins, face grave. Mr. Carter, Jalen, we've received a report questioning your identities. Allegations of fraudulent tickets. Silence slammed the cabin. Jalen's stomach dropped, his breath caught. Fraudulent tickets. Marcus's eyes hardened. That's a lie. The captain's voice was flat. We'll need to divert, for everyone's safety. Gasps, murmurs, outrage. Jalen's world tilted. The door closed behind them. And in that moment, the flight and their lives veered into chaos. The engines thundered as the jet gathered speed, pressing passengers into their seats. Jalen stared out the window, watching runway lights blur into streaks. For a moment it felt like freedom, but the whispers lingered. Can you believe it? One man muttered 2 rows back. First class. For a kid. Probably daddy's money, another whispered. Jalen heard every word. He didn't flinch. Instead, he tapped his tablet awake, fingers moving fast. Richard leaned over from 2A, smug smile still plastered across his face. What are you even typing, kid? Texting your friends about how rich you are? Jalen's eyes didn't leave the screen. I'm fixing a code error. Richard scoffed. Code error? What are you, some kind of child genius? Jalen finally looked at him. Calm. Direct. I built a program that helps kids who can't read see words in sound and touch. It's used in schools across 20 states. I'm not fixing it for me. I'm fixing it for them. The row went quiet. Even Dr. Hayes, back in her new seat, lifted her eyes from her book to watch. Richard shifted, uncomfortable. He chuckled too loud, like he needed to fill the silence. Sure, kid. Whatever you say. Jalen didn't argue. He went back to his code, tapping lines of text into perfection. Marcus, from his seat in business class, saw his son's calm composure and exhaled. He knew this wasn't new. His boy had lived with doubters from the start. The plane climbed higher, seatbelt signs blinked. The cabin settled into the drone of flight. Jalen opened another file on his tablet. A demo screen flashed colors, then shifted to a tactile map, letters turning into vibrations through a connected sensor. The passenger beside Dr. Hayes leaned over, curious. What's that? She whispered. Jalen overheard. Without looking up, he answered. A way for students with dyslexia to feel sentences as patterns. It keeps them from giving up. The woman blinked. You designed that? Yes. His voice was steady. I test it every night. I fix it every morning. Dr. Hayes smiled faintly. Her eyes softened. The boy wasn't just a passenger. He was a storm waiting to be recognized. Then turbulence struck. The plane jolted hard. Glasses rattled. A baby cried. Jalen's grip tightened on his tablet. For a second, panic fluttered in his chest. But Olivia leaned forward again from behind, steady and calm. Same as before, Jalen. 4 in, hold, 4 out. You're okay. He nodded, matching her breath. Calm returned. But others weren't so calm. This is ridiculous, a man hissed across the aisle. We had to wait 20 minutes at the gate because of that kid. Now turbulence? Should have never boarded him. Heather, passing by, gave a tight smile. Sir, please remain seated. But she glanced at Jalen, not the man. And the glance said it all. Richard caught it too. His smirk widened. See? Even the crew knows. Trouble follows you. Marcus's fists clenched on the armrest behind them. His jaw tightened. But he stayed silent. For now. Half an hour into the flight. Calm seemed to return. The hum of engines filled the silence. Passengers drifted into movies or books. Jalen tapped on his tablet again, checking new data. He whispered softly to himself, testing outputs. Dr. Hayes leaned forward slightly. It's brilliant, she murmured. You're brilliant. Jalen looked at her, startled. She gave him a nod. Don't let small minds distract you. I've seen enough of those in my life. A faint smile touched his lips. It was the first kindness he'd received since boarding, but it didn't last. Heather appeared again, kneeling by Richard's seat. She whispered low, but not low enough. Jalen caught the words. I'll let the captain know we can't ignore it. Richard nodded slowly. His eyes flicked sideways at Jalen, then back to Heather. Jalen's pulse quickened. He pretended to stay focused on his tablet, but his ears strained. Heather disappeared toward the front. The cockpit door opened, then shut again. Marcus caught it too. He leaned forward. Voice low but firm. Jalen, something's not right. The boy nodded. Lips pressed tight. He already knew. Minutes later, the intercom clicked. The captain's voice came steady, practiced but heavier than before. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've received a message from ground control that requires our immediate attention. We'll be making an unscheduled landing to verify some concerns. For your safety, please remain seated." Gasps, groans. "What concerns?" a passenger called out. The captain didn't answer. The line went dead. Jalen's tablet dimmed in his lap. His hands trembled. Richard leaned close, whispering just loud enough for him to hear. "Told you, you don't belong here. And now, everyone will see it." Jalen stared out the window. Clouds pressed thick against the glass. The sky seemed to close in. He wasn't scared. He was angry. Angry enough to know this was just the beginning. The cabin buzzed with nervous energy as the captain's announcement echoed in their ears. "Unscheduled landing. Concerns for your safety." The words clung to the air like smoke. Passengers shifted in their seats, whispering, speculating, glaring. "What concerns?" someone demanded. "They're not telling us everything." "I knew it. Shouldn't let kids into first class." Jalen sat rigid in 2C, his tablet dark in his lap. Richard leaned back smugly in 2A, arms crossed, as if the diversion were a prize he'd personally won. Heather moved quickly down the aisle, her smile strained to breaking. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. The captain has everything under control." But calm was gone. A man in business attire muttered, "We're losing time for a meeting because of this nonsense." Another hissed, "Bet it's a fake ticket." "Knew it." A woman gasped. "You don't think it?" That word, loud enough for the row to hear, rippled panic across the cabin. Jalen's chest tightened. His breathing grew shallow again, but Olivia's steady hand on the seatback reminded him. "In! Hold! Out!" He steadied himself, jaw clenched. The captain's voice returned. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be landing shortly at Oakland International. Security teams will meet the aircraft. Please stay seated until instructed." And with that, the whispers became open noise. "Security? Because of him? This is outrageous." Marcus finally stood from his business class seat, calm, unshaken. But his presence alone silenced half the cabin. His voice carried firm and clear. "My son's ticket is legitimate. We boarded through the same gate as you. There is no reason to treat him as a threat." Heather stepped quickly to block him. "Sir, please sit down. You'll make things worse." Marcus's eyes locked on hers. "The only thing making this worse is your bias." The words stung like fire. Passengers gasped. Heather's face flushed red, but she forced a smile and retreated down the aisle. The descent began. The engines shifted pitch. The cabin lights dimmed, and tension coiled tighter with every passing minute. Richard leaned toward Jalen again, voice dripping poison. "You hear that, boy? Security's waiting just for you. When they drag you off this plane, remember, I told you you don't belong." Jalen stared at the clouds beyond the window, jaw locked. His silence was louder than words. Dr. Hayes across the row shook her head in disgust. "Shameful," she muttered. "This is shameful." The wheels hit the tarmac with a jolt. Brakes screeched. The plane slowed, then veered not toward the gate, but a remote corner of the runway. Through the window, flashing lights appeared. Blue, red, white. Gasps erupted. "Oh my God, police! Why here? Why not the terminal? They're treating this like a crime scene." The aircraft rolled to a stop. Engines hummed low. The intercom clicked. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated until local authorities complete their inspection." Jalen's palms sweated against his tablet. His father's hand rested steady on his shoulder. "They're going to try to humiliate us," Marcus whispered, "but we'll walk with dignity." The door hissed open. Cold air flooded the cabin. 3 officers boarded in dark uniforms. Behind them, a woman in a suit with an FBI badge, Agent Rivera, expression stone cold. Her voice rang sharp. "Jalen Carter, Marcus Carter, please step forward." The words sliced through the cabin. Every eye turned. Passengers craned necks. Whispers turned into open judgment. It was them. Knew something was off. Fraudulent. Of course. Heather hovered behind the officers, pretending to look concerned, but relief flickered across her face. Marcus rose slowly, pulling Jalen gently to his feet. The boy held his backpack tight, his tablet still glowing faintly in his grip. A woman in row 3 whispered, "Poor kid," but her voice was drowned by another sneering, "Should have stayed where they belong." As Jalen and Marcus walked the narrow aisle, the humiliation weighed heavy. Phones appeared. Passengers filmed openly. Get this on camera. Going viral already. Jalen lowered his eyes. Marcus squeezed his shoulder. Keep your head high. Richard leaned just enough for his whisper to sting. Don't trip on your way out, boy. The world's watching. Jalen stopped, just for a heartbeat. His eyes met Richard's. Calm, fierce. I'll remember this. Then he walked on. At the door, the officers flanked them. Agent Rivera's gaze never wavered. For questioning, she said flatly. That's all. But the words meant nothing. The scene was the sentence. As they stepped off the plane, the flashing lights blinded. Cameras clicked from the tarmac. Every passenger stared from their windows, pressed to the glass like spectators at a spectacle. Jalen felt the weight of 1,000 eyes. Shame, anger, fear. But deep in his chest, something else burned. Resolve, he whispered to his father, voice steady despite the tears threatening at the corners of his eyes. They think they can take our seat. But this isn't over. Marcus nodded once. His grip on Jalen's shoulder tightened. And as they descended the stairs into the waiting swarm of flashing lights and armed officers, the cliffhanger hung heavy over them all. What exactly had been set in motion? And who was behind it? The room was cold. Too cold. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, painting everything in a sickly glow. Jalen sat stiff in the plastic chair, backpack at his feet, tablet clutched in his lap. Beside him, Marcus leaned forward, elbows on the table, steady but tense. Across from them, 2 agents flipped through files like predators circling prey. Agent Rivera broke the silence first. Her voice was calm, clipped, professional. Jalen Carter, age 12, traveling under a first-class ticket purchased under your father's account. She tapped the folder. We've received an anonymous tip alleging fraudulent documents and misrepresentation. Care to explain? Marcus's jaw tightened. There's nothing fraudulent about our travel. We boarded legally. You saw the boarding passes yourself. The second agent, a man with sharp features, leaned in. Mr. Carter, do you expect us to believe a 12-year-old child legitimately owns the rights to multi-million-dollar educational software? That this isn't some scam? Jalen's fingers curled tighter around his tablet. His voice was soft but steady. It's mine. I designed it, line by line. If you want proof, I can show you. Rivera's brow arched. Show us? Jalen powered on the tablet. The screen glowed to life, pulling up the program's interface. Vibrations buzzed faintly against the table as letters turned into sound and touch maps. This is for kids who can't read words like others do. It helps them feel sentences. Schools use it already. You can call any district listed here. The second agent snorted. Nice presentation, kid, but clever coding doesn't prove ownership. Anyone can claim credit. Marcus leaned forward, his voice calm but carrying the weight of steel. My son is not a fraud. He's not a criminal. He's a child who has worked harder than most adults in this country, and you're wasting time treating him like a threat instead of verifying facts. Rivera studied them, expression unreadable. Then she slid a paper across the table. Anonymous reports aren't random. Whoever called this in had insider details, names, financial flows. That's not something the average prankster knows. Marcus frowned. Meaning? Rivera's eyes narrowed. Meaning someone wanted you grounded, someone with knowledge of your company. A sharp knock cut through the tension. The door opened, and in swept Diane Walker. Sharp suit, sharper heels, their attorney, a longtime ally who knew Marcus well. She set a thick folder on the table and stared the agents down. Before you go further, she said coolly, here are Carter Tech's incorporation documents, patent filings, financial audits, and verified contracts. All stamped, all legal. If you have suspicions, point them elsewhere. My clients aren't your criminals. The male agent flipped through, visibly annoyed. Rivera scanned the documents carefully, her frown deepening. Jalen exhaled for the first time since sitting down. Diane's voice softened when she turned to him. You did nothing wrong. Do you understand me? Jalen nodded, gripping his tablet tighter. But Marcus wasn't done. He looked directly at Rivera. You said someone had insider details, that this wasn't random. Who are we really dealing with? Rivera hesitated, then spoke low. We can't say yet, but I'll tell you this. This kind of report, it's patterned. We've seen other minority-owned startups hit with similar anonymous tips right before major investment meetings. Delays devalue them. Investors lose confidence. Competitors swoop in. Diane leaned forward, eyes flashing. So this isn't just bias, it's sabotage. Rivera didn't answer, but the silence was answer enough. Jalen's chest burned. His invention, his work, was being used against him. Not because it failed, but because it threatened someone powerful. He whispered, almost to himself. They're trying to erase me before I even start. Marcus's hand squeezed his shoulder. They won't win, not this time. Rivera closed the folder slowly. For now, you're cleared to leave. But stay close. This investigation isn't over. And if I were you, her eyes sharpened, I'd watch who sits in the boardroom with you tomorrow. The words hung heavy. Who sits in the boardroom? Who wanted them grounded? Who was waiting for them to fall? The answer, Marcus knew, wasn't far. And neither was the fight. The walk back through the terminal felt longer than the flight itself. Marcus kept his arm firm around Jalen's shoulder, but the boy felt every stare, every phone lifted to record, every whisper that followed them like a shadow. Fraud, fake, trouble. The words clung, even without being spoken aloud. In the waiting lounge, Diane lowered her voice. They didn't have enough to hold you, but make no mistake, someone wanted you embarrassed. Someone wanted that story to spread. Marcus nodded grimly. The question is who? Before Diane could answer, a woman in sunglasses and a long grey coat approached. She moved with purpose, ignoring the gawkers and cameras, walking straight to them as though she belonged at their side. Marcus Carter. Her voice was calm, steady. I need a word. Diane stepped forward like a shield. And you are? The woman removed her glasses, sharp eyes, lines of exhaustion, but also defiance. My name is Dr. Eleanor Hayes. We shared a flight. Jalen's eyes widened. You gave me your seat. Eleanor nodded, gaze flicking between them. And now I need to give you something else. They moved to a quiet corner of the lounge, away from cameras. Eleanor slid a small flash drive across the table. This, she said, wasn't just a random call-in. I know because I used to work with the people who made it happen. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Explain. Eleanor inhaled slowly, as if the truth itself were heavy. I was a senior analyst at Apex Core Ventures. Their strategy is simple. If they can't buy innovation cheap, they crush it. Anonymous tips, sabotage, false alarms. They've done it before, and they'll do it again. You were next. Jalen's chest tightened. His voice came out barely above a whisper. They tried to erase me. Eleanor's jaw hardened. They're afraid of you. Afraid of what you've built. Your program doesn't just make money. It gives power to those they can't control. And power is the one thing they won't share. Diane leaned forward, suspicious. Why come to us? Why now? Eleanor hesitated. Her hands trembled slightly. Because I can't live with what I know anymore. And because I've seen what happens to founders who ignore the warning signs. They don't just get delayed. They disappear. The words hung heavy. Jalen felt a chill that had nothing to do with the airport air conditioning. But before Marcus could press further, a commotion stirred near the windows. Reporters were flooding the terminal, cameras raised, microphones flashing. The story had spread faster than turbulence. Billionaire boy grounded for fraud. Questions shouted through the glass. Marcus, was the ticket real? Jalen, did you fake your credentials? Are you under investigation for laundering funds? The guards tried to block them, but the frenzy only grew. Marcus pulled Jalen close, guiding him through the side corridor. His voice was low, urgent. They'll twist everything. Don't answer, don't look back. But Jalen couldn't help it. He glanced once, just long enough to see Richard Bennett's face on a reporter's live stream feed, smirking, talking into a microphone, telling the cameras his version of the story. He's lying, Jalen whispered. His stomach turned. Back in a quieter holding room, Eleanor plugged the flash drive into a laptop. Screens filled with documents, emails, memos, internal Apex Core notes. One stood out. A timestamp from 2 hours before the flight even departed. Carter Tech will be neutralized by midday. Expect diversion. Media seeded. Prepare talking points for investors. Jalen's hands went cold. They planned it. They knew before we even left. Eleanor nodded grimly. This wasn't a reaction. It was a strike. Marcus's voice was controlled, but rage burned underneath. So they risked an entire flight's safety just to smear a 12-year-old? Yes, Eleanor said flatly. Because if they win, they buy your company at pennies on the dollar. If you resist, they bury you. But before more could be revealed, Eleanor's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, face tightening. They know I'm talking to you. Her voice was sharp now, urgent. If I stay, I put us all in danger. You need to protect that drive, and you need to walk into tomorrow's boardroom knowing half the people smiling at you will be waiting for you to fail." She stood quickly, pulling her coat tighter. Her eyes lingered on Jalen. "Don't let them steal your voice, or your seat." And then she was gone, swallowed into the crowd before anyone could stop her. Jalen stared at the empty space she'd left behind, his mind spun with questions. Why risk herself to help us? Why now? And what exactly did she mean by disappear? Diane closed the laptop, her tone clipped. "She's right about one thing. Tomorrow, that boardroom will be a battlefield, and you need to be ready." Marcus's hand rested firm on Jalen's shoulder. "We will be." But Jalen couldn't shake the image of Richard's smirk on that live stream or the Apex Core memo promising neutralization. If they'd come this far to discredit him, what else were they willing to do? The hotel suite was quiet, except for the low hum of the city outside. Jalen sat cross-legged on the couch, tablet open, but his eyes weren't on the screen. He stared at nothing, the weight of everything pressing down on his small shoulders. Marcus paced the room, phone in hand, calling, emailing, reaching out to allies. Diane sat at the table, sifting through Eleanor's documents again, her face drawn and sharp. Then a knock. Marcus froze. He wasn't expecting anyone. Diane motioned for silence. She approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. Her shoulders stiffened. "It's him." Marcus frowned. "Who?" She pulled the door open, and there stood Richard Bennett. His suit was wrinkled now, tie loosened. He looked less like the smug first-class passenger, and more like a man unraveling. His voice cracked as he spoke. "I need to talk to you." Marcus's first instinct was to slam the door, but Diane stopped him. Her eyes narrowed. "Let him in. If he's here, something's broken." Richard stepped inside, eyes darting nervously as if he expected someone to be following him. He wrung his hands, sweat dampened his temples. He didn't sit. He couldn't. His words tumbled out in a rush. "It was me. I made the call." The room went still. Jalen's head snapped up. His hands tightened on his tablet. Marcus's voice was low, dangerous. "You did what?" Richard swallowed hard. "The anonymous tip. I reported you. Apex Core pushed me into it. They own controlling shares in my company now. They made it clear, help bury Carter Tech, or watch everything I've built disappear." Diane stood, arms crossed, her eyes cold as ice. "So you tried to ruin a 12-year-old child's reputation, on a plane, surrounded by strangers." Richard's voice cracked. "You don't understand. They would have destroyed me. I thought," he broke off, shaking his head, "I didn't think it would go this far. I didn't think they'd divert the flight." Jalen's voice cut through the room. Quiet. Sharp. "You thought wrong." Richard froze. He turned to the boy, meeting those steady eyes, and for the first time since 2A he flinched. Marcus stepped closer, towering over him. "You humiliated my son. You risked everyone on that plane. For what? To keep your seat in a company Apex Core already owns?" Richard's breath shook. His shoulders sagged. "I was weak, and I was wrong." Diane leaned in, her tone cutting. "Then make it right. Give us proof. Names, documents, anything that ties this back to Apex Core." Richard hesitated. His eyes darted again. "If I talk, I'm finished. They'll come for me next." Marcus's voice was steel. "They're already coming. Choose how you go down." Richard pulled a folder from his bag. His hands trembled as he set it on the table. "These are board meeting minutes. Strategy notes. They outline Apex Core's plan. Deliberate delays, anonymous tips, character smears. You weren't the first. You won't be the last." Diane flipped through quickly. Her jaw tightened. Jalen leaned forward. His voice was steady, older than his years. "Why me? Out of all the companies, why me?" Richard's eyes softened. For once, no arrogance, only regret. "Because you're too good, too young, too visible. They can't control you, so they'd rather crush you." The words hung heavy. Silence lingered until Diane snapped the folder shut. "Tomorrow changes everything. Investors will have heard Apex Core's story already. If you don't walk into that boardroom with clarity, you lose." Marcus nodded. He turned to Richard. "You're coming with us." Richard's eyes widened. "What? No, if I show my face—" "Exactly," Marcus cut in. "You confess in front of them, on record. They'll have no choice but to see the truth." Richard hesitated, panic flickering. But then he nodded, defeated. "Fine, I'll do it." That night, Jalen sat by the window, the city lights glowing beneath him. His tablet rested on his knees, but he wasn't coding, he was drawing. Letters, shapes, waves. A new interface idea forming in his mind even as the storm raged outside. Marcus joined him quietly. "You don't have to keep working tonight." Jalen shook his head. "I need to. Every time they try to take something from me, I have to build more. It's the only way I know how to fight back." Marcus's chest tightened with pride and pain. He pulled his son close. "You're stronger than they'll ever be." The next morning, the boardroom loomed like an arena. Glass walls, long polished table, investors seated in rows like judges waiting for a trial. Soulless capital, major backers, men and women in tailored suits, scanning tablets, murmuring numbers. The hum of whispered doubt filled the air. Grounded for fraud. Anonymous report. Concerning. Maybe Apex Core had a point. Jalen walked in with Marcus, Diane and Richard trailing behind. The room quieted. Every eye turned. The chair of Soulless Capital leaned forward. "Mr. Carter, young Mr. Carter, you've had quite an eventful 24 hours. Care to explain?" Jalen's throat was dry, but his eyes were steady. "Yes," he said, "I will." He set his tablet on the table. The screen lit up with his program. Vibrations buzzed softly across the polished wood. Words turned into sounds, shapes, touch. "This isn't just software," he said. His voice grew stronger with each word. "It's a way for kids who've been told they can't to finally say they can. Last night someone tried to stop me from showing you this. They tried to erase me before I even walked into this room." Murmurs stirred. Investors leaned forward. Richard shifted uncomfortably, then rose to his feet. His voice cracked, but it carried. "He's telling the truth. Apex Core orchestrated everything. And I helped them. I filed the tip. I tried to bury him, but I can't lie anymore. You need to know what's really happening behind the scenes." Gasps. Chairs scraped. Phones lit up as assistants scribbled frantic notes. The chair's eyes narrowed. "This is a serious allegation." Richard set the folder of documents on the table. "It's not an allegation, it's evidence." The room pulsed with tension. Every investor, every analyst, every assistant waited for the hammer to fall. Would Soulless Capital believe Jalen, or would they side with Apex Core's carefully planted narrative? Jalen sat quietly, hands folded in his lap, watching men and women older than him decide his future. He whispered to himself, too soft for anyone else to hear, "Don't take my seat." The boardroom was silent, heavy with anticipation. The documents Richard dropped on the table sat like dynamite, unassuming but powerful enough to shatter careers. The chair of Soulless Capital leaned back, fingers steepled, scanning each face around the table. "Let's be clear, these are serious allegations. If true, they point to deliberate sabotage, possibly corporate fraud." Richard nodded shakily. "It's all in there. Every memo, every instruction. Apex Core wanted Carter Tech discredited before today." Whispers broke out. Some investors shook their heads in disbelief. Others scrolled frantically through emails on their tablets. Marcus stood, his presence commanding without raising his voice. "You asked for clarity. You asked for proof. My son's work speaks for itself. What you see in those papers speaks for Apex Core. Now the choice is yours. Believe the lie or believe the evidence." Then he sat down, calm, steady, as though the decision no longer belonged to him. Jalen rose. All eyes turned to him, the boy who had been mocked, dismissed, humiliated, grounded. He held his tablet, the interface glowing softly. "I didn't come here to fight corporations," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried. "I came here to help kids. Kids like me. Kids who've been told they don't belong. Last night someone tried to take my seat, but I'm still here, and I'm not moving." Gasps rippled. The boy's words cut sharper than any lawyer's. The chair's eyes softened, just for a moment. Then he cleared his throat. "Soulless Capital votes to move forward with investment in Carter Tech. Full funding, full partnership." The room erupted. Phones buzzed. Assistants whispered. The tide had turned. By evening, headlines swept across the nation. "Billionaire boy vindicated. Apex Core exposed in sabotage scheme. Carter Tech secures historic deal with Soulless Capital." From humiliation to triumph, Jalen Carter's seat at the table. Apex Core scrambled with press releases, but the evidence Richard provided, combined with Eleanor's flash drive, spread faster than their denials. Federal investigations loomed. Investors fled. Richard himself sat in a corner of the hotel lobby, head in his hands. His confession had saved Carter Tech but destroyed his ties with Apex Core. For the first time, his smirk was gone. Jalen walked past him, backpack slung over one shoulder. He paused just long enough to say, "You gave me back my seat. Don't waste yours again." Richard looked up, eyes glistening. He nodded silently. That night, Marcus, Jalen, Olivia, and Diane gathered on the balcony of their suite, city lights glittering below. "You did it," Marcus said, pulling Jalen close. "They tried to erase you, and you stood taller." Jalen shook his head. "We did it. Every time they pushed, we pushed back harder." He opened his tablet one last time, renaming the updated program build Project 2A, a quiet tribute to the seat that started everything. The story could have ended there, but for Jalen, it was just the beginning. He looked into the night sky, the glow of the city reflected in his eyes. "They can try again tomorrow, and the day after, but I'll always keep my seat, and I'll always keep building." Marcus rested a hand on his shoulder. "And the world will always hear your voice." They tried to humiliate him. They tried to erase him. But in the end, Jalen Carter proved what we all must remember. No one can take your seat if you refuse to give it up. If this story moved you, subscribe to Black Voice Matters right now. Don't just watch. Be part of a community that tells the stories others try to silence. Hit that notification bell so you never miss the next powerful story. Because here, every story is more than content. It's a voice, it's a fight, and it matters.